Today is the Dísing's moon. That is the full moon, which marks a very important celebration in the pre-Christian Nordic heathen calendar. I'll talk about the Dísing in this video, which is that kind of heathen holiday. It was probably a celebration of specific spring goddesses, probably with relation to a cult of fertility. My name is Rune Hjarnø Rasmussen. I'm a historian of religion. You can look for me on Patreon and give me a monthly donation to support my ongoing work with renewing our knowledge of Nordic history and religion with the latest trends in anthropology. Pre-Christian culture in Northern Europe had four important celebrations around the year. One in the apex of darkness, of the dark time, winter, and that is Yule, that later became Christmas. Probably really a prolonged period of different celebrations. Then there's the spring celebration, which is the Dísing here. And there's a summer celebration about which we know rather little. And then there's an autumn celebration that sort of marks the threshold for entering the winter period. That's called the Winter Nights, and through history it may have become the All Hallows, Halloween celebrations that are still held today. The Dísing's moon is the full moon of the third lunar month. And lunar months, that is the ancient system for reckoning the month, where a month is a period from one new moon over the waxing of the moon, over the waning of the moon, ending at the next new moon, where a new lunar month begins. It's moon months. Now this is an old way of counting the months that is documented from many locations in different places in the north, England, Sweden, Dalarna, Jutland, also Norway. And the third full moon of the year was the Disathing. In some location, this lunar month was simply called Disa, a word that might be related to the Dísir, a class of goddesses in Nordic mythology. And a myth actually even emerged that associated the founding of this holiday, the Disathing, with a mythical queen Dísa. And there has been speculations that this could have had some, or this celebration could have had some relation to the goddess Freya, who had the name Vanadis. She was sometimes called the Vanadis, the goddess of the Dis of the Vanir. This was one of her names. So the Dísing in Sweden was also the legislative congregation of all the Swedes. And in the heathen times, this day was celebrated with these particularly grand sacrificial feasts held every 8 years. Now this was reported by a German chronicler, Adam of Bremen, and his account is not historically precise. He talks about a temple of pure gold surrounded by mountains, and there ain't no mountains around Uppsala, and I lived there, and a temple of solid gold. I don't know. But he also mentions 3 deities, and where we seem to recognize aspects of his account. You know, Thor is associated with thunder, Odin with war, Frey with sexuality. They give libations to Thor for good harvest, to Odin for war, and they ask Frey to bless weddings. Now, at these particular Dísing celebrations that were held every 8 years, the proceedings would go on for 9 days with feast meals and sacrifices every day. And in these heathen octannual celebrations, sacrifices were made of 9 males of every species, including humans, at the temple in Uppsala. These sacrifices were hung in a grove nearby that was, according to Adam, sacralized by their decomposition. And this is actually not unrealistic. We know from other cultures the idea that decomposing sacrifices are perceived as sacralizing. There was also a particularly sacred tree and a well used for sacrifices. Now, the celebrations may have had erotic or sexual aspects. Like we saw in the last video, this is actually, or seems to have been a theme in spring folklore. And Adam of Bremen, he finds the liturgical songs so numerous and repulsive that he preferred to leave the matter in silence. Also, the Danish chronicler Saxo Grammaticus describes nauseating, unmanly ritual dancing in religious occasions in Uppsala. And in this particular spot in what is today called Old Uppsala or Gamla Uppsala, the archaeologists, they've found structures beneath the medieval church, like post holes, and also found remnants of a great Iron Age hall that had very broad doors, and apparently have had these iron spirals sitting on it. It sounds totally like Conan the Barbarian or something. Also, there were like long lines of poles surrounding the site. It might have looked like a similar V or sanctuary in Jelling in Jutland, where there are also, by the way, these great burial mounds. Now, part of the background for this, that Uppsala was particularly sacred was that it was the site of the Ynglinga kings who regarded themselves as descendants of the god Frey, who, according to Snorri, settled in Uppsala. So there's this religious aspect to kingship. Kings regarded themselves as descendants of specific deities. I made some other videos about this. Also, when Christianity came, then the Swedes constructed a saint, Saint Eric, who had some different similarities with Frey. The saint didn't have a big phallus, but a leafy branch. But a Swedish peasant in the Middle Ages would still go up to Uppsala and sacrifice a horse to Saint Eric. I totally love that fact. And with the implementation of Christianity, this holiday here, the Dísing, was actually moved ahead in the year and defined with a Christian holiday, the Candlemas, on February 2nd, which happened to be very close to the Irish St. Bridget sort of Imbolc complex. And in the Christian mythology, that date is where the Virgin Mary went through a Jewish ritual cleansing after having born Jesus. Right? So there is an identification to this powerful female figure that somehow gives birth to the light of the year, I guess, Jesus in the Christian logic. And that's 2nd of February, the beginning of February, a time of year which is also associated with this female figures, the time of Goa, or Bleeth, different female figures. However, the Swedish scholar Andreas Norberg has argued quite convincingly that the pre-Christian dating of the Disathing was now the full moon that is closest to the vernal equinox. And this celebration also happens to fall close to another later Christian invention, which is the Annunciation Day, the day where Jesus was conceived by Mary having sex with God. The biology of the thing is fairly straightforward. If Jesus was born in late December, then he must have been conceived in late March, right? Also the Christian practices, or the folkloric practices, they have some particularities. The Annunciation changes its name in Scandinavia, like I mentioned in another video, from being the Day of Our Lady, it becomes the Day of the Spring Lady. And there are symbolisms linked to this day that seem to hint at some kind of marriage between heaven and earth somehow. Not only in the Christian perspective, where you have Mary having sex with God, but also through other layers of the folklore. It's sort of a theme throughout spring. For instance, from the English, we have this very beautiful prayer that has been preserved as a blessing for the plow in the spring. And it goes, Erke, 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 Mother Earth, may the Almighty Lord grant you the fields to increase and flourish, fields fruitful and healthy, shining harvests of shafts of millet, broad harvests of barley. Hail to thee, earth, mother of men. bring forth now in God's embrace, filled with good for the use of men. Note how the harvest is the fruit of a sexual union between heaven and earth. It is as if this gender or sexual tension is very fundamental to how the well-functioning world produces what humans need to live. And I think that kind of logic may have been somewhere at the foundation of this Dísa goddess celebration that Adam found too obscene to even tell us about. And when you look at the Scandinavian folklore, you also get this image of these gendered months that are somehow in relation to each other, and that perhaps conceives and gives birth to the things that humans need to exist. On the Scandinavian material specifically, there's a number of scholars have associated this marriage of heaven and earth with the gods Thor and Sif, right? Possibly representing a sky deity and some sort of earth harvest-like goddess whose marriage produces the sustenance of human beings. And particularly in relation to this time of year, it's also worth noting that this time of year where a solar or a lunar month, whatever, has been called Thor month. There are the Thursdays of Thor, these weird holidays that sort of play with the idea of light coming and agents throwing stones in water to break the winter, or sticking a staff in the earth to break the power of winter. And there's also some erotic suggestion in the relation to the arrival of the crane, for some reason, at this time in southern Scandinavia, and in fact in all the Baltic area. And I'm a bit reluctant to be too specific about what all this means. I would just suggest the possibility of seeing the heathen spring celebration of the Disathing in the context of these erotic motives that seem to be like a permeating feature of folk belief in Northern Europe around this time of year. Yes, thank you very much. You can follow me on YouTube, Facebook, and also a bit on Instagram. And as mentioned, you can also Patreon support me if you're interested in the work I do and want to support me continue making it. Thank you very much.